Assalamu alaikum. We're here at the Amina Muslim Women's Resource Centre to highlight some of the works, and I've got Safa Yousaf. She's going to tell you a little bit about one of the projects that they're doing. So tell us about this
So during
exhibition.
16 Days of Activism, we collected stories from women who have used our service, but also women who we've worked with over the years, sharing some of their stories to get them and get their voices heard. So their stories, a lot of them, what we found was that they spoke about what triggered their abuse. So some of them, or actually many of them, have moved on into new relationships, and some of them had experienced abuse when they were children, and they're in their 50s now. But what we've found is that there's simple objects, everyday things that will trigger back some of their memories of domestic abuse. So for example, something simple like a potato.
Let's have a look. Tell us, we've got this potato.
So this
here.
potato, a woman shared a story with us. She was saying that every day her husband used to weigh her food. He used to weigh whatever she was going to eat, and he used to put it in a scale and say, this is the amount that you're allowed to eat.
So he would monitor all the food, that kind of control.
Yeah.
I guess that's coercive control.
Exactly. So not all abuse is physical, but yet all abuse is definitely something that needs to be reported. So now in Scotland we're quite lucky where coercive control is a crime. So even if it's not physical abuse, but you feel like your husband is isolating you or controlling you, then that is now illegal in Scotland. So it can be criminalised.
And it's shocking that obviously this potato triggered that memory within that lady.
Yeah, so think about how many things that you know she's cooking, anytime she's making lunch or preparing lunch, she's actually not in that relationship anymore, but despite that she's still having to think about all the abuse on a daily basis. So it's a very lived reality. So even if somebody's experiencing abuse, and it might have only been, not only, but it might have been for a few years, every single day they're being triggered by something and it's bringing it back.
So tell us about some of these other things.
Sure. So let's take this one. This is basically one about marital rape. So a woman who is experiencing rape within her marriage, anytime she was raped, he would always buy her flowers the next day. Is almost like, so a lot of the times people ask, well, why doesn't that woman leave a relationship?
So that was almost like a form of guilt, and
well, kind of like, sometimes you think, how did that woman not leave? But if somebody's...
No, from the man that he'd buy the flowers because he felt bad about what he
either he felt bad, or it was just a way of controlling her into making sure that she would stay in that relationship. So then we obviously have some other items here like sweets. This was a woman who she experienced sexual abuse when she was 5 or 6 years old, and her uncle used to come into her room and give her sweets to try and relax her. Now she's moved on, she's older now, she's married, she's got kids of her own. So think about how many sweets that she sees on a daily basis.
And she kind of go through that trauma whenever she sees things like this.
Exactly, yeah. And then there was like, obviously I was playing the EastEnders theme tune earlier and people were wondering why, but there was a couple, a younger woman who was saying that when she was growing up, one time she was sitting watching EastEnders with her gran, and there's a scene where Trevor and Mo, it was like a big famous storyline where Trevor was this angry husband who was really violently abusive to his wife. And any time that there was a violent scene, whether it was like, I think there was a scene where Trevor, who was a husband, threw a plate at his wife Mo because the dinner was cold, and her granny used to nudge her and say, look, that your granddad used to do that to me. And
wow.
it was only when she got older she started thinking about all the things that her granddad did, and she didn't know any of that stuff as she was growing up, that was wrong. And then she was just thinks her gran actually for years, I think they were married for like 60, 70 years, had to put up with that. And it's only now that she thinks, I think the last thing she said was, I pray now that she's at peace. So only because she's passed away now. And even actually, because we work with Muslim women, some of them are Muslim centred. So you'll see this one here. There's a woman who used to say that she used to spend 8 hours a day looking at the Islamic perspective on plastic surgery because her husband used to put her body down. So she used to literally read through Islamic opinions online to try and figure out whether it was Islamically permitted for her to go through plastic surgery to please her husband. And
this is why we've got the Islamic books of fiqh.
Yeah, and then there's one here that's really powerful as well, of a woman who, she was locked in the house for 3 years. Literally should never be allowed to go out. Only when her husband would say that she's allowed to go out. He used to keep a stone behind the door, so that he could monitor whether she had left the house or not.
By seeing whether the stone had been moved or not.
Exactly, yeah.
Wow.
And then obviously there's...
And that sort of 3 years she wasn't allowed to go out, see family, friends, nothing at all.
No, unless it was with her husband's permission. So he wasn't specifically physically abusive, but again, that's a way of coercive control, controlling your spouse, and that is illegal in Scotland. Yes, and sometimes, you know, that stays with you forever. And she's in a new relationship as well, but it's still something that's been triggered by a door.
So what's this?
This is a woman who said that her husband made her feel so ugly that any time she always used to wish that she could put a brown paper bag over her head. And this one's particularly powerful. This is a drawing that of a woman she found in her diary. She'd experienced abuse. Her husband was physically violent towards her. One day he'd left the house, stormed out. She kind of doodled something in her diary, and you can see it's obviously got like an image of her, and there's words around it like ha ha, idiot, that kind of thing. And then she says in the quote, she says that when she looks back on it, she's noticed that she's torn a little bit out. And the reason she tore it out was because she couldn't look back at it because of how traumatic, whatever she'd written here was so traumatic for her that she couldn't bear to read it anymore. Yeah, so she ripped it off. So that's why there's a bit missing here. But yeah, so they're very powerful. And these aren't women abroad. These are women in our community in Glasgow who are experiencing this kind of abuse from their husbands.
A lot of people might question why did they not walk out, but it's not easy walking out from a relationship. And a lot of these women were born in the UK, educated here, and it wasn't as if they were women from Pakistan.
No, they're professionals, you know, educated. Some of them are not.
Some very independent, but when it comes to relationships,
some you would not look. If I were to expose who these women are, not that I would absolutely, but you know, if I was to tell you the names of these women, some of them you might know, and you'd be like, no way, she did not experience it. How did she tolerate that? But it's because a lot of these men have Jekyll and Hyde personalities, where they're not always abusive, they're not always physical, but one thing that they do always do is control. So a way to keep their partner is by sometimes being nice. And when they're nice, they're really nice, and they'll have this persona. And a lot of men as well, you would not, if I had told you the names of some of these men as well, you'd be like, no way, he's lovely, but you know, you don't know what's happening behind closed doors. And it does often take a woman more than 20-30 times before she reports any type, whether it's to Amina,
20-30 times,
yeah, before she picks up a phone. A woman was staying over at her grandmother's house when she was younger, and she noticed, or she never kind of knew that they'd had problems, her grandparents, but one time when she was over, she was thinking about it, you know, she heard lots of shouting and screaming, she heard boxes being flown around, she heard like her granddad really raising his voice, and then she later found out that he was angry because his wife hadn't got an ink stain out of the trousers.
You can see that ink stain at the top.
And then this one is a woman, you know, she came from Pakistan. She came to Scotland thinking that she was going to have a great life with her husband, but her in-laws treated her really badly, and she was basically just a maid. And what unfortunately is not protected within Scotland, what Amina are going to campaign to try and get protection of, is in-law abuse. What's covered within the Scottish legislation is intimate partner abuse. So if it's abuse between a husband and wife, it's a crime. However, what we're noticing through Amina is a lot of women are complaining about how they're being mistreated by their mother-in-law. So for example, there was a woman who came to us who literally could not, her mother-in-law would monitor everything she ate. Her husband used to have to pass roti through the table, underneath the table, so she could eat.
Wow.
So that is not a crime in Scotland. Maybe it is.
This is happening here in Glasgow.
This is Glasgow, you know, so it's not like what we're seeing abroad, even in London. I think in England now the law has changed where in-law abuse is a bit more recognised. But in Scotland, unfortunately, it's not the case. So what happens to these women? Who are they meant to call? They can't really, if they speak to the police, okay, it's some sort of, they can try and find something that they can kind of criminalise, but a lot of women are finding it hard to leave. So maybe their husbands aren't, well, they're kind of compliant to the abuse because they're not stepping up, but it might not be their husbands that are abusive, it's their in-laws.
If anyone is going through issues like this or problems or knows of anyone who else is going through this, what can they do? I mean, they can get in touch with yourselves. How do they get, I mean, have you got a number? Or
we do, we have a number. We have our Amina Muslim Women's Helpline, which you can find online. The Amina Helpline is open 10 to 4 Monday to Friday, so it's a listening ear service and a signposting service. And obviously, like, our main concern is, are women safe? So if a woman isn't safe, then we would encourage people to report it. And you know, the police, even if they don't want to, even if they're worried, for example, what we find with a lot of women is they have children and they're like, oh, what will happen to my children? Well, if you're really concerned, then phone anonymously to the police and say, like, what would happen if, you know, I report this abuse? And they will assure you that they can get you into a safe place without, you know, having to kind of affect your children's lives too much in terms of being taken away and all that kind of stuff, making sure your children are safe with you. And then also there's really good services and agencies out there that can support women. Like there's a Daisy Project, there's Himmet Graif, which is a safe place for BME women to go to. So if you feel like, you know, you don't want to, you might feel a bit intimidated going to a service that doesn't cater for BME women, but there are services out there like Himmet Graif that can help with housing, help you get a safe place to stay, help you kind of get through the financial difficulties that you might face as well. Amina also has a hardship fund that we've recently started, so if any woman is in desperate need of financial assistance, then they can come to Amina and we can see what we can do to help.
Jazakallah khair, thank you. I'm hoping that you can appreciate the important work that Amina do, and you know, we all need to support him.
Please donate to our hardship fund.
Exactly. Donate wherever you can, raise awareness, and we need more men to come forward and to start helping organisations like Amina to spread the awareness about domestic abuse, whether it's coercive control, whether it's physical, gender-based violence. It's something that it's not an issue that affects women, it's an issue that affects all of us. It's all our problem. So, you know, just come along and do whatever you can to help them raise awareness and get rid of this evil within our communities.